peruse. People a chance to see the screen.
I can see the screen.
Okay, just looking, we got about 58 people. Okay, I've lost view of everybody. So anyways, my name is Nancy Balcom. I'm with Connecticut Sea Grant, and I'm here to facilitate this introduction to Connecticut tools. We have a short amount of time and we have 4 great speakers. So it's kind of a lightning round. So again, we'd like you to keep your phones and audio on mute, your cameras off. The session is being recorded and we'll send a link to everybody. And we will also ask you to submit any questions in chat. Given the short amount of time that we have, it may be that we won't get to all of the questions at the end of the session, but as has been noted earlier, we will be able to share those answers out after the fact. So here's our 4 speakers. Kate Knight is an environmental analyst with Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. She's going to lead us off from the state perspective. She'll be followed by Emily Wilson, who is a geospatial extension educator with the Yukon Center for Land Use Education and Research group, which is part of Yukon Extension. Katie Lund will follow. She is the Director of Engagement for the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation, which is based here at Yukon. And then Corinne Flax, who is the Manager of School and Community Partnerships at the Bruce Museum, will take us to the end. So I'm going to move right into Kate's presentation.
Thanks, Nancy. I appreciate that. So today what I'm going to do is give you a quick overview of 2 projects we have ongoing and under development. So you can stay tuned and stay engaged in those processes, and then give you a quick overview of some things that are ready now and the correct contacts for those. So next slide, please. So the first one I would love to talk to you about is the stormwater manuals update. This is the soil erosion and sediment control guidelines and the stormwater quality manual. The Connecticut Council on Soil and Water Conservation came to us early and said, we would like you to do these together with us. And this was primarily to keep these more integrated than they have been in the past. So next slide. So we concurred and we put in a proposal for Long Island Sound study funding to do this project. And then Denise, the chair of the council, and I kicked off to start forming a work group. So that way this was a work group guided process. And we did receive that funding. So we were onboarded Fuss & O'Neill for contractor support for the technical revisions. Next slide. So the first step with the work group was we threw in all the kitchen sink of all the needs we wanted out of this. And then we had to refine and prioritize. And this gives you the overarching goals that came out of that process and those discussions. And all of them we wanted to do in such a way that we're streamlining future updates or making this a living document so that it wasn't so over prescribed that it was instantly out of date or didn't allow flexibility. We wanted flexibility for site-specific needs. So that's next slide. So this is kind of the highlight of, there's so many more collaborators within this too, so this doesn't do it justice, but this gives you an overview of where we've been and who we were collaborating with and where we're going to go with this. So as I mentioned, we did this work group formation. That process was completed on pretty early on. We did a lot of scoping and defining of the priorities and the needs. And then we onboarded Fuss & O'Neill to help us with the data gathering and the development. And that really went through about this time last year through early summer. And they were able to give us the 2 drafts, and the work group has completed their draft review. And at present, we're under manager review. And we're starting to look at putting together a public comment period. And this is what I think would be most interesting to you, and collaborate with CLEAR for an outreach program for this as well. So if you have interest on that, we're going to advertise it, of course, but if you want direct contact when that happens and we've selected a date, my email is later in this email. In this presentation, you can directly send that to me. The next slide. So as I said, the other one I wanted to give you an overview on was the Connecticut watershed model. We did this in 2002, and so this is an update. And we've nicknamed it the C2M just in case I drop that lingo later. So next slide. So the way we've gone about this is using the HSPF model. And it's partly because we had done that in 2002, so it gives us a comparison, but also it's primarily because it's the most comprehensive way to get a holistic picture. The original one was a little more narrow in scope, and where in Connecticut we looked at, and we're including the entire state and some pieces of New York and Massachusetts in this one. We're also expanding the parameters that we're looking at. So those are on the left here, and actually there might be animation in this one, where we're looking at a variety of things and trying to put in a tracer so that we can anticipate the up and coming pollutants that we haven't quite got a monitoring system yet for. But the most important piece of this slide for you is the tool piece. And that's at the bottom with the arrows, and you'll see the scenarios and SAM. SAM is a scenario application manager. And it's where it takes all of these inputs and you can run what-if scenarios. You could do everything from apply a land use change. Say you want to change an agricultural land to a developed area, and see what that does to your watershed and all the watersheds that are downstream of you. Or you could look at a climate change. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, I gotta go quicker. Okay, so we can go to the next slide then. So this is where we are. We expanded the monitoring to support this expansion. We developed a modeling plan and a CRAP together. We're in the development phase. Early spring, we hope to start to build the scenario application manager. And now the sneak peek that is useful for you is this modeling, outreach, and implementation. We're proposing, but we don't know if we have funding yet, to do a series of workshops to co-create scenarios with communities and then link that to implementation and other partners too. So next slide. So that all went really fast. So there's my contact information. And then if you don't mind going to the next slide too. I wanted to put it a plug in for Vivian. So we've been starting to collaborate a lot with USDA and NRCS. And Vivian is the new outreach coordinator. It's specific for Connecticut and a really useful resource for soil erosion and all those things. And their own EQUIP program, which is a funding program. And then if you don't mind going to the last slide. These are the now things. Sarah Watson's running the Deep Climate Resiliency Fund. These are live links. You can go there and also email directly. The 319 state program, the request for proposals has gone out. That's a great opportunity for funding. So we have an on-site wastewater inventory project that will link you to the existing data, and Kelly Strike is the contact for that. And then we have a decision support tool that we collaborated with Claire on, and that will link you to that as well. And that is my pivot to your next speaker.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate it. Again, lightning rounds. So next up is Emily Wilson, please.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Nancy. So yeah, I was asked also to talk about a couple new tools, and I'm going to talk about two today: our state GIS office in progress and our watershed assessment tool. Next slide. So first, I need to give a little shout out to CLEAR, the center that I work for, the Center for Land Use Education and Research. Our mission is there to provide information assistance to many of you and our audience in support of better land use decisions, healthier natural resources, and more resilient communities. So the things we're all working on. And CLEAR covers these different topical areas: water, land use and climate resiliency, STEM education, food systems, and then my favorite, geospatial technologies, because that's what I do and it touches on everything else. So there are many tools coming out of CLEAR, as Kate just mentioned one. So I can't sell that these are the only things that we're working on as a center. Next slide. So in terms of GIS and mapping, I've seen a lot of maps throughout the afternoon here already. So I think we all understand why GIS and maps are important. But what I've been focusing on the last few years is why GIS coordination is important. Just because these data layers are building blocks for applications across all different disciplines, they eliminate redundancy, fill data gaps, and we all have the same geography and similar needs. So why are we doing things more than once? Next slide. So after much effort by many people, we, as a GIS community, got some legislation through that was passed in June for our new state GIS center in our Office of Policy and Management here in Connecticut. And it also included a geographic information officer and an advisory council. So this all kind of got kicked off in early 2022. It's very new, but we are very excited that it is in existence. The GIS office's first priorities have been to hire. There are currently 2 people there, including the GIO, and there soon to be 5. The advisory council has met several times, which is there is representation by over 10 agencies. There are very active work groups tackling different issues. They are working on parcel data collection, not the parcels themselves, the data, and standardizing that map layer, which is critical to all of us that work on properties. We're working on aerial data acquisition, including imagery, elevation, and buildings for 2 different data collection years, and then also the data clearinghouse, which is what I'm going to talk here about. Next slide. So this is what our brand new geodata clearinghouse has here in Connecticut. I underlined 3 agencies up there: CT Eco, DEEP, which is our Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and our Department of Transportation. That is where the data is coming from right now. Next slide. Each of those agencies has a slide here. And of course, I picked CT Eco because this is my project. So I want to highlight the work we're doing. Next slide. On the homepage here of the geodata portal are these categories. So if you're looking for a specific type of data, this is one way to get there. CT Eco is populating the imagery, elevation, and land cover categories. Next slide. And then there's also the data library there on the top nav. And this opens up a huge long list of data sets that exist right now, coming from the agencies that can be found using what content type, what the data source is in terms of who's providing it, categories, and more. Next slide. So clicking on one like our 2019 spring aerial imagery for Connecticut, you get some information like this, links to all different places, how to get it, and so forth. Next slide. And then over there on the right, apps and maps is underlined. Is that 1 minute, Nancy? Oh my gosh. Which shows the different viewers we have. Next slide. So this is an example of the aerial data viewer that is in the geodata portal. Next slide. Okay, so this was released in November of 2018, November 18th of this month. There's a lot more coming. Next slide. I'm just going to skip over this. I also wanted to mention the watershed assessment tool, which has a long team of people, which I don't have time to name, I'm afraid. It's funded by the Long Island Sound Study and DEEP. It includes a combined condition index metric, which I don't have time to explain, but if you look at this tool, you can learn about it. The tool is designed to assess and monitor watershed health and help managers make land use decisions. Next slide. So if you go to the website, this is what you find. There's a story map that explains the tool, the dashboard to explore the basins in the index, and then the scenario builder where you can change the land cover to see what happens. And I also just want to mention that there is a webinar on the CLEAR website that the team did earlier this month. It gets into much more detail about how it was done in the science.
Thank you, Emily. Sorry to rush you along. So next up is Katie Lund with Circa.
Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, I'm Katie Lund, the Director of Engagement at UConn Circa. Today I'm going to highlight one of our tools in the Resilient Connecticut project we have, which is a regional resilience planning and assessment project. It started in New Haven and Fairfield counties, but now is expanding to the rest of the state. The project has involved work in 4 primary areas to develop planning tools, technical tools, field research, and engagement. And today I'm going to focus on the technical tool aspect by Nancy, if you could forward. Thank you. We have developed a climate change vulnerability index viewer. So this is a tool I want to talk about today. This tool is in a format of a story map, and while I won't have time to talk about the methods or some of the definitions of the tool itself, there's an introduction tab that you can see on the left that contains a lot of that kind of information. And also how to use the viewer tool tab, which can describe in detail how to go about using the tool. This view right now is showing a regional aspect of flood vulnerability for both New Haven and Fairfield counties. So again, this is a 2-county focus, but it's going to be expanding to the rest of the state in early 2023. Next slide. And this is a view of the 2-county region showing heat vulnerability. I'll zoom in and show how this tool can be used to look at more of a community level. But next slide. I just wanted to mention that a lot of the information that can describe the tool in more detail, all the different contributing layers to these flood and heat vulnerability views can be found in a fact sheet that we have. I'll lead you to that at the end of my talk. And this fact sheet also explains, what this tool is and how municipalities can use it and how it works. Next slide. So you can zoom into particular areas of interest with the tool. The resolution of the pixels is 10 acres or about 200 meters. And as you start zooming into different areas, you might want to print or create a PDF of the view that you're looking at. And so there's that option in case you want to use it for a presentation or a report or grant application. Next slide. This is an example of what one of those PDFs looks like for viewing heat. Again, looking at the New Haven area. And I want to transition for the time I have remaining to talking about what some of the uses are of this information. Next slide, Nancy. By looking at that Fairhaven area of New Haven from the previous slides, Circa has overlaid this heat and flood vulnerability mapping with something that we refer to as zones of shared risk, which are regions that are facing common climate change challenges. And so these overlays are being used to identify what this map is showing is a resilience opportunity area in the area of Fairhaven and New Haven. And so we're using this kind of analysis to identify adaptation projects. So in Fairhaven, for example, which is an especially vulnerable population, and there are things, community assets like fire stations and schools. There's a substation here, important egress routes or evacuation routes for the community. We're looking at ways to come up with different types of adaptation projects through engagement with community and thinking about ways to elevate the roads, do different flood protection mechanisms, green infrastructure types of projects to reduce stormwater, or looking at the heat vulnerability and identifying areas where more trees can be planted to reduce heat vulnerability. So next slide. These resilience opportunity areas are another tab on the CCVI viewer. So if you're interested in seeing the 63, 64 different areas in these 2 counties, you can also find that in the story map. And again, this effort is going to be expanded to the rest of the state. Next slide. Nancy, I'm actually going to have you skip over these 2 slides. I just wanted to show this, back one, just I'll put this link to the sea level rise and storm surge viewer, which is another tool that Circa has. Again, looking at this Fairhaven area with more of an aerial photo, it does show some of the inundation from sea level rise at 2050. And so you can think about using these tools in combination. Next slide. To look at more of a community-wide planning. This is the city of New Haven, and think about overlaying some of these Circa tools on top of things like FEMA maps and looking at building vulnerability in some other critical facilities. Next slide. You can also use the tools which we have in workshop settings or public meetings. Our Director of Resilience Planning, John Truzinski, presented this CCVI information to the Board of Alders meeting in New Haven, and the local newspaper kind of picked it up and put it out. So it's another way to get public information out through press and I guess the last slide is just showing you where you can find it. So we have a website, that's the Resilient Connecticut Project's website, leading you to the CCBI viewer. And I put the QR code there. You can look at the viewers directly for flood and heat, or you can view them through that story map approach that I showed. And this also leads you to that fact sheet that I mentioned as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Katie. I'm going to queue up Corinne's slides. And
Hi, move my camera. Whoop, there I am. So hi, my name is Corinne Flax. I manage school and community partnerships at the Bruce Museum. And I am talking about a couple technologies that we used, a group of us through the AGU Thriving Earth Exchange. We received funding and support to put together a community project to trace and track non-storm related tidal flooding. And specifically, we were really focusing on ways to work with the community and convince the Greenwich, Connecticut community that this type of flooding is a real issue in this area. Next slide, please. One of the things that we really felt was that taking a look at historic flooding in this area, which is on the coast, was really important because there is this long-term history of flooding here in Greenwich. Next slide, please. However, currently flooding that was happening on a much longer timeline, like a 100-year flood, a 500-year flood, now is like a 5-year flood or maybe even a 5-month flood. And so we felt that using historic and current photos of this type of flooding would be really an effective way to communicate with the public. Next slide, please. And we found that using the data collection application MyCoast would be an incredible way to get the community actually involved with this data collection. MyCoast is an application that's free for users, and what they can do is if they see coastal flooding, they photograph it, they upload it to the application, it automatically geotags it. Users can add other information if they want. Their names can be public or private, and then that data is in the app. And for the areas that pay for it, which can be individual states, municipalities, there is a price to have access to the data. And you can add specific data points that you're interested in collecting as well. I have some basic information about pricing for the app. However, I will say that they are more than willing to negotiate with individual municipalities. They did give us sort of a price for a year-long subscription to the application, but this really could depend on where you're coming from. So these prices are here. They also have other information on their website, but I just wanted to kind of give an overview of that. Next slide, please. So we got quite a few images uploaded using MyCoast over the 3 months that we were able to use it for the Flood Watchers program. And these images, along with the data points that were collected with them, were really useful for public presentations, for a small exhibition at the City Hall here, and then also for using as kind of talking points for convincing people that coastal flooding is an ongoing issue and it's not just related to hurricanes or weather. These blue sky photos of flooding were a really effective communication point. Next slide, please. Of course, we didn't just rely on the public to take photos. We also used what are essentially spy point hunting cameras. These are cameras that take photos. You can kind of set them to take photos every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, however you want to do it, and then they upload it to the cloud. And so what we did is we found certain areas in public parks in town that we felt would be particularly likely to flood at high tide points, at king tide points. And then we posted these cameras, not super high up. You can see I'm like in a tree here, not super high up in trees, but in places where we felt like they'd be out of wandering hands. And then if we go to the next slide, you can see one of the images that we were able to collect with these. This is the same area just in like a couple hours time. And I don't know, hopefully you can see how the entire path has in just a few hours been completely flooded by this little estuary next to it. And so it was with these kinds of images that we've been able to really communicate with the public and also get them involved in collecting this data as well. And so that's really all of that.
Thank you, Corinne. Thank you, all of my speakers. We are almost to the wire here with the time we're going to have. So I don't know if we're going to suddenly get booted back to the main room. But Kathy, do we have any questions?
I do have a question for Kathleen Knight. We saw earlier that a lot of funding goes to projects for advanced stormwater BMPs and existing development to better treat primary nutrients and sediments. However, most of the more advanced BMPs are not, sorry, I'm having, oh, here it comes. It's in the chat, Kathleen, are not required for new development.
So we collaborated for retrofits with the SNEP manual.
Yep.
So most of the manual does directly address new development. There are no requirements in these manuals. The requirements come from the permitting processes in the towns. But there are outlined guidance ways of different standards, and we're trying to approach more than just sediment. We're trying to take a pollutant approach as well.
Great, thank you. Looks like we're going to be booted. So any other questions that were asked, we will be getting answers to you. Once again, thank you for the lightning round. It's a real teaser of these tools, and I hope people will go into your links and dig around and take a good look at them and ask questions if they have any. Thank you, and we'll see you back.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully everyone has made it back from their breakout rooms. We've made it almost to the end. Let me share my screen. We'll get through our last few things. Okay, so like I said, thank you so much. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much, first of all, for being here and participating in our workshop today. We hope it's been, as helpful as we aim for it to be and as much fun to participate in as it was to put together. I want to say a special thanks to all of our speakers and facilitators today. We really, really appreciate your time and you sharing your expertise with everyone. We really appreciate that so much. And also a big thanks to the New York Sea Grant and Connecticut Sea Grant staff who were working behind the scenes today to help everything run smoothly. So thank you to Nancy Balcom, Kathy Butting-Howarth, Jimena Perez-Vizcasillas, Nancy Jones, and Kathleen Fallon. Sarah, Elizabeth, and I really appreciate your help today. So, as we've said numerous times today, we will be following up in the coming weeks as promised with links to the recordings and other post-meeting materials. But before we let you go, we want to ask you 3 quick evaluation questions, and then we'll leave with our contact information for you. So number 1 question. We want to know what sessions you found most useful today. You can choose more than one option here, so please choose all that apply. And, I hope we're all poll everywhere pros by now. If you're participating via the browser, go ahead and visit the links in here. I do want to note if you're participating via text.
We can't see your screen, FYI.
You can't see my screen. Oh man, here we go. Sorry, guys. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. I can't see y'all, so that was helpful. So if you left this LIS RES session previously to join another poll session in either the shoreline planning or green infrastructure breakout sessions, you do need to make sure that you've left those sessions and rejoin this one. So to do that, you would text leave and then wait for the message that you've left those rooms, and then you can rejoin this one by following these directions here. And just a final reminder for the day to not click on that link that you receive in that message when you join the session. So give folks just a couple seconds to answer us here. Like I said, you can pick more than one, so feel free to do that. Awesome. Lots of people really enjoyed Lynn and Tripp's funding session. I know I did too. Great. All right. feel free to keep answering that one for a few more seconds. We have our second question coming up. And this is a pretty important one for us, actually. We want to know, would you be interested and able to travel to an in-person version of this workshop next year? This is going to be really helpful feedback to us as we reflect on, lessons we learned from today and this year, and how we might want to run this workshop next year and in the future. So let us know what you think about if you'd be interested and able to travel to an in-person meeting. Okay. It's fair enough to be unsure, but this is still helpful. Good to know. Okay. I'm gonna give it a few more seconds. And then last but not least, we are interested to know what topic or topics that you might or would like us to cover at a future workshop. And again, this is not going to create a word cloud, so you can type, as things come to you, although I really appreciate everyone linking their words together with the underscores earlier. So let us know what you think. And I see some suggestions in the chat, so thank you so much. I know I'm not seeing everything, but I do see some questions about the transcript. And yes, we will share the transcript in our follow-up materials. So thanks for that. See some good, really great ideas rolling in here. Scroll down and see what I missed while I was looking through the chat. Okay. I like the idea of pairing people together, making those connections. Okay. Oops. All right. We've been discussing this thought about smaller regional gatherings, so that's helpful feedback. More Lynn Dwyer, I agree. I don't know if Lynn is still on the call or not, but we'll let her know if she's not that she was a hit. All right, these are really great ideas. I'm going to just let it keep rolling. And in a 30 seconds, a minute here, we'll move to our last slide. I like that one. Good or otherwise outcomes. Important to learn lessons learned. So votes for code updates and model ordinances. I like it. Okay. All right. They seem to be slowing down. So thank you so much, everyone. I can't wait to go look at all the responses we just got. I know as a team we'll reflect back on those. This is really helpful. So thank you so much. So last but not least, I want to leave you with our contact information. And a note again that we do have a Gmail if you just don't feel like typing out all 4 of our emails, or you're not sure, who to go to for general inquiries, you can reach us there. And again, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I hope that everyone has a great rest of your week ahead, a nice weekend. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.